Historic Preservation of Land will now come to order. The purpose of this roundtable, which we called for today, is to provide an update on the programmatic agreement with the Guam Historic Preservation. We also note that as of the military has released a draft Joint Region Marianas Public Access Plan, and the public has until tomorrow to comment on this access plan. And we're hoping today that with SHPO and with representatives from Joint Region that we will give enough information to the public at large so that they will have an opportunity sometime tonight and tomorrow to get a comment in. So why don't we go ahead and get started. I'll invite Mr. Royce Tsui, Ms. Jennifer Farley, Linda, Mr. Knat, and Mr. Feely. Please. Oh, Mr. Cameron and also, okay. Why don't we start with Joint Region, and they can just tell us what this access plan is about and how the public can access it and how they can provide their comment and just some background, and then we'll get some information from the others so that the listening audience will be better informed.
Thank you, Senator. My name is Roy Tutsui. I represent Rear Admiral Payne, Joint Region Marianas, and we're very pleased today to be able to accept the invitation to be able to help discuss more about the draft Joint Region Marianas Public Access Plan with you, and also give some background as to how we're doing public outreach on it. I have Jen Farley here who have 10 minutes to give that background, and I'd like to go ahead and turn it over to her right now.
Thank you. So I just want to provide a little bit of background on the commitment itself and the development process really quick up front. So this is a development of a Joint Region Marianas Access Plan is a general mitigation measure of the programmatic agreement. Commitments under that requirement include initiating discussions within 120 days of the PA, which was March 2011, designation of an access plan coordinator on JRM staff, developing the plan in coordination with PA signatories, invited signatories, concurring parties, and interested members of the public. And once finalized, publish the plan in local libraries, post to DoD websites, public notifications, basically make sure that we get the word out that the plan and the program is activated and available, provide escorts as required, and an annual review of the plan if requested by signatories, invited signatories, or concurring parties. So I just want to highlight up front that this has been a very collaborative process with the Department of Parks and Rec Historic Preservation Office and Ms. Linda Uggan. Sure. Just a real quick interruption. If you could give the listening public maybe a web address that they can go to, and they can probably follow us along in the discussion today. Okay. If they want to find it, yeah, the plan and the comment forms. Okay. Probably the shortest way to get there is the following web address. It's http://go.usa.gov/K, and then the last three letters are capitalized, ZWG. And it's not an easy web address to recognize, so yeah, that's why I didn't read it off up front. I understand, though, it also may be on the, Mr. Mark Calvo mentioned it was going to be on the oneguam.com, I believe it is, website as well. It's also on the Historic Preservation Office's website, I believe, maybe? No? Okay. So that might be an easier one. It's also on the Joint Region Marianas website. Okay. no problem. So we've had a really, as I mentioned, we're working in partnership with the Department of Parks and Rec Historic Preservation Office and Miss Linda Uggan. We've had a really large internal development team as well. We have a lot of stakeholders internally and externally, including leadership, security, safety, public affairs, environmental for the DoD stakeholders. The plan was developed in coordination. The draft plan that is out right now was developed in coordination with the PA signatories, invited signatories, concurring party, and interested public. So how the process started was in late 2011. We did an early engagement with the public. We put out a request for feedback, basically, to help us better understand the sites that the public is interested in visiting, type of activities of interest. We did receive over 200 comments during that process, and those comments were considered during the development process. They largely were related to sites of interest. Oops, I'm sorry. So after that initial public engagement period, from December 2011 to July 2013, which you can see it was about a year and a half, we drafted the plan internally, worked through internal concerns with safety, security, and environmental. I just want to mention that this is a really unique program. In fact, we could not find another one like it in the DoD. So we had some information to work on in terms of access on other installations nationwide, but not a lot because this is a very unique program. In August 2013, we provided the draft plan to the signatories and invited signatories for a 45-day review, and we received and considered their feedback. From September 2013 to April 2014, we worked as an internal development team again to find resolution to the key issues that came out of the signatory review process. And I will mention, it's not here in the brief, but we did brief the signatories, invited signatories, on how we resolved their comments in our May 22nd third annual workshop under the programmatic agreement. So that was just this past May, prior to rolling it out. So I just want to touch briefly on the process itself in the plan. I'm just going to highlight probably what I think are the most important points. There's a lot more to the plan that I'm going to go over, but maybe we'll be able to address some of that in the question and answer session. So regular access hours are in the plan currently are from 8 to 5, Monday to Sunday. So essentially, someone could request access to see one of the historic sites identified in the plan any day of the week from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock. The access request process is basically that they fill out attachment A, which is the request for access form, and it's submitted 30 business days in advance of the requested visit. We do ask that individuals interested in visiting provide an alternative date just in the event that something necessitates a cancellation or the preferred date is not available. There's a section concerning escorts. So escorts are required for all Tier 2 and Tier 3 sites, and I'm going to talk a little bit about what that means next. But and basically, in summary, it's the sites that are inside of an installation perimeter. So the escort program is also very unique. There's a specific form in the plan, it's called Attachment C, for individuals that are interested in becoming an escort to escort visitors to the different sites that are within the plan. The escorts must be current DoD ID card holders, but they go through a process of review and they're added to basically a approved escort list. And then as we receive requests for visits from the public, we will basically assign escorts for those visits from that approved list. So the program, we're really going to be reaching out to the public to try to maintain a robust escort program. So, we'll be looking for that, and we are excited about folks that might be interested in being part of that program. So I mentioned the access tiers. Attachment E of the plan is the approved site list. So we did receive, I mentioned, a lot of comments on sites of interest. We also received a list from the Historic Preservation Office, and we have, of course, an internal inventory of sites. when we were developing the plan, we had to consider things like safety and security of the visitors. And so not all of the sites, I'm sure you'll note, not all of the sites on DoD properties are included on the approved list, but there are over 40 sites on the list. They are organized by tier. Tier 1 is basically the sites that are outside of an installation perimeter, and for all intents and purposes, people can really access them already, but they are identified in the plan. Tier 2 sites are sites inside of an installation perimeter fence. An example of that would be a site on the main base of Navy Base Guam, like Sumai Cemetery would be a site that would fall under Tier 2. Tier 3 is inside the installation perimeter and in or adjacent to a restricted area. Sure.
Can I get you to write that address down and I'll ask them?
Sure. Not a problem.
So I see you have it up.
Just showing this.
Oh, yeah. Okay. It's case sensitive. Okay. Okay, so Tier 3 sites are inside of an installation perimeter and in or adjacent to a restricted area. Really, the only difference is that they require a little bit of extra training, both on the part of the escort and on the part of the public visiting the sites. Again, mainly to ensure their safety and security. I wanted to highlight this section on modifications in the plan. So we do consider the plan to be a living document. It addresses the current situation. And as we implement the program and over time, I'm sure we will have some lessons learned. We may have some changes to the process itself, potentially changes to the sites listed. So I just wanted to indicate that it is we consider it a living document. There's a process for how we will address modifications to the plan, and we'll be reviewing it annually to make updates as appropriate. There's also a reporting provision under the programmatic agreement that requires us to report on the status of visits. So we'll be, for example, reporting on the number of visits, the sites visited, any challenges, of course, incurred. That kind of feedback will be part of our reporting process. And then, lastly, I just wanted to highlight our public engagement aspect of the draft plan review. So we started the review on 15 July. We released a public service announcement on that day. We also did public engagement. Basically what we did is we made available copies of the plan and comment forms, and were present to answer questions of interested members of the public at several different venues, the Agana Shopping Center, the Micronesia Mall, and the Liberation Day Carnival. We did actually receive some comment forms at one of the engagements. That was at Micronesia Mall, so that was helpful. We actually received some public comments during that process. We also put out a second public service announcement on 29th of July, and then, of course, as you mentioned, the end of the comment period is tomorrow, August 14th. So with that, I just wanted, sure. Sure. Prior to the start of the rollout, we were able to brief representatives of the governor's office, and then just following the rollout, we also briefed the mayor's council and also Senator Uggan. We coordinated a brief with him, and I think it also went out to the rest of the senators, but it was a smaller group.
A brief for the senators, the 2 senator states.
I note that my predecessor, the late Senator Ben Pangilinan, submitted a list of about 23 sites. Do you recall how many of those sites you were able to include in the sites that would be available?
Sorry, sir, I don't recall off the top of my head. We do have a record of all of the feedback received initially, so I could provide that information if you were interested, but I don't remember off the top of my head which of the sites are contained in the plan and which ones aren't.
Okay, I'll just provide you again with the list of the 23 sites that he was kind of hoping to include. And okay.
Okay.
And that, did you want to write?
Did you want me to provide any feedback on some of these?
Yeah. Well, we'll have a comment also.
Okay.
So on it, but I just wanted you to see it because I know that he had submitted a list. And
yes, I recognize it.
And we're very appreciative of that. And
yeah.
It Jen, could you just quickly elaborate on the criteria for what is a historic site that meets this program?
Sure,
And
it's
medicinal sites.
yeah, for medicinal plant collection, it's actually a lot broader. There are no specific sites identified. We're going to be relying on the individuals who are interested in visiting to let us know where they would like to go look for those types of natural resources of cultural importance. But the definition of a cultural historic site is actually expanded under this program. It's not just sites that are listed or eligible for the National Register. It also includes other historic sites of interest. So it's a little broader than the regulatory definition of a historic site. One thing I do want to point out as I look at this list is that I mentioned that safety was a big concern for our security folks in terms of public visitation, and there are a couple sites that are on this list that were considered not safe for public access. And an example would be, and I apologize if I mess up the name, but LaFac is the first one on the list. That site was considered and not put on the approved list. There was actually an accident at that very location, and they did not feel it was safe for public access. So it just kind of illustrates that we did go through each and every one of the sites that was submitted to us, and we considered them and determined whether or not they were safe, and it was not a problem for security as well.
And can you also address how it's not finite, and that if another site becomes offered and eligible, that how it's dynamic?
Sure, yeah, I sort of alluded to that a little bit with the modification process. It is a living document, so if we get feedback that a particular site of interest that we haven't already considered, or maybe we should reconsider for some reason or another, then we can certainly do that as part of the annual review and update process.
Go to Linda. Well, why don't I go to Linda, and why don't you tell us about your involvement and how you do
My name is Linda Agan, the Guam State Historic Preservation Officer. My involvement was through the Section 106 Federal and National Historic Preservation Act. When we received a letter from Honolulu. Is it me? It doesn't want to hear from me. We received the request for a Section 106 consultation for the military relocation to Guam and the CNMI. We proceeded to review the undertaking, and it was an enormous one. We concluded that the build-up will, of course, impact some historic sites, which will be some that are listed, some that are potentially eligible. So the survey, I think your surveys went back to 2006 in preparation for this build-up. It may have gone back further than that. So they already knew that. So the outcome to mitigate the adverse effects was the programmatic agreement. And that was developed, and we provided the Department of Defense a list of people that may be interested in the consultation process. And I think everyone in this panel here were part of that consultation invitation. The programmatic agreement went on. It went through meetings and hearings, and it was finally signed by me March 9, 2011. A lot of the stipulations that, and I call these stipulations, not items of the programmatic agreement, there's quite a difference. We negotiated, of course, with Arthur. Thank God he helped. He's an attorney. So a lot of the stipulations in the programmatic agreement, and one of them is to, and this was because the public wanted access to sites on base, on DOD land, U.S. property. And this is one of the document that was produced through the a stipulation of that document, programmatic agreement. My involvement, further, so that was done, that's March. In July we gave you a list of, I think, 28 sites, inclusive of the complex historical Aurora Historical Complex site. And that included the Spanish Steps, the well, and I think 5 in there, the rock shelter, which you excluded here, I believe. I'm not sure. Okay, but the way it's set up here, it doesn't say Aurora Historical Complex. It's on the Guam National Register. And while I'm on the Guam National Register, you're mistaken when you say in this plan that all the National Register sites are also included in the Guam Register site. I don't know who gave you that information, but it's not true. So that needs to be deleted from here. From your, not from the appendix, from your write-up. From the beginning. You assume that because these sites are on the national, it's also in the Guam Register, which is not true. I'll show you where, Jen. You and I work closely together, so. And then I think you produced the first draft, Jen, and gave us back in August last year, a copy, the first draft, right? We gave you our reply along with the signatories and whoever else the consulting party was, or concurring party. You're one of them, right, Mr. Cameron? And then you produced the second draft back in before our annual meeting in May 22nd this year, right? And then you produced that draft from that meeting, and this is that draft, the third draft. So I've been involved in the development of it, and I must confess here that I took it for granted that everything will be kosher and properly. I didn't really read between the lines or really read it. So last night, and I have all my markings here, I did read it. Finally read it, the third draft before it goes out for the draft final, which of course we work on developing a good document. But being unique, as you say, Jennifer, I don't want to call you Miss Farley. I want to produce something that's really professional, looking like making tracks, day plots, that kind of a booklet. Not something like this and your locations are missing. There are some sites that are very important to be included here, like the Fenna Massacre site, which we gave you, it's in our list. We gave you the Taragi Pictograph Cave. We gave you what happened to the ArcLight Memorial at Anderson. I heard it was demolished. And that was on our list. And that was a memorial that was set up by, actually, Dr. Strong really pushed for that memorial. What happened to it? Did we ever get a 106 on that? Yeah, I appreciate the federal government being, there are some things that don't come to us, and we would like to really stop that. That ArcLight was it's a memorial dedicated to 95 pilots, I think, who died during the mission of the Vietnam bombing in 65 to 73, I believe. And I don't know if Dr. Strong knows that it's not there anymore, but we really worked on that for maybe 2 years to get every paperwork in order just to build it there. So I would like to know what happened to the ArcLight Memorial. Several other stuff that weren't included, like the Santa Pangolina's list, the LIFEC. Because there was one incident was it a very major accident, or was it one of the military that slipped in?
It was actually a child that died.
A LIFEC?
Yeah.
The Fenna Massacre, the Taragi Pictograph Cave, that's very accessible. You have the beach here, so that should be included because it's part of all the pictograph cave along the coast, or Retidian cave that has the pictograph. So I think before a draft final is produced, get all the comments, and let's really collaborate on a professional-looking document, something that you can put, I would like to put on my bookshelf, and locational maps aren't there. Write up on these historical sites. It should be more than just a blurb or 2 sentences, or there's more to it than just saying here it is, and
Sure. We don't include maps, just to let you know, because of ARPA
more
issues,
photos.
but we can certainly talk to you more about that.
Your tier 1, you can produce maps. Your tier 2, escort. That's Sumai Cemetery. Bit more good of a write-up, better write-up on it than just, I'm a historian, and when I read this, it's like, okay, I'm really interested, what now? But it's
I
just...
think Maybe I'll try this. I think what I wanted to come out of this was the fact that some people are going to have to pull all-nighters tonight. We need to get the comments in and the list. Maybe you're not going to be able to write up the descriptions you want, but at least go through and cross-ref your list that you want, the 28 that you wanted. My office is cross-refing the 23 that Senator Ben wanted, because we're going to resubmit a comment and say that he asked for these 23, and we note that 18 of them are on this and 5 are not, and ask again for consideration of the 5. I mean, now that I know that Shaw died, we'll still comment it, but then well, at least I know why that may or may not come out in the final draft. But I think everyone needs to sit down and do that comparative analysis, because unless I'm mistaken, tomorrow is the end of the comment period. Unless there's going to be an extension, we need to get our comments in tomorrow. All right, and so you're going to need to do that.
On the description, it's already there in your reports. I mean, I don't need to reinvent the wheel here. So your description of these sites should be garnered from those reports that you have. I mean, it's a tremendous amount of reports, so somebody can research that.
Yeah, Ronnie actually, our archaeologist, put in a large amount of time to come up with a description that was as succinct as possible, not to overload individuals with information and historical reporting type information. It was really to let them know the basic importance of the sites and kind of highlight why they might be interested in going. And we can certainly take another look at them and see if there's a need or a way to expand those descriptions a little bit. In terms of the format of the plan that you see, this is a draft. So of course we didn't want to print booklet type format plans at this stage because we're still in the development. Sure, it's an excellent comment, yeah.
Jen, I think a root concern is finite sites, and that the concern I'm hearing is if it's not listed, then they can't go to it. Can you explain how, if it's not listed, but there's a legitimate site that needs to be addressed and there's an escort that we can take them to, how would we work that, even if it's not actually listed here, and then eventually add it to the list formally?
If we've received it already, it's already been considered, and for some reason it was not included. Like as I mentioned, it could have been a safety concern based on the topography and terrain. It could have been a security concern, for example, if it was located on Naval Magazine. It could also have been a cultural resource sensitivity concern, and a pictograph cave would be something potentially that could be a concern, having a lot of visitors. But so I can't speak to each one individually off the top of my head, but I do have a record of how they were considered and why they weren't, if they were not included on the approved list. Now, it doesn't mean that. Yeah, so for sites that we haven't received, what we would do is we would, of course, if we receive them in this comment period, we'll take a look at them now and consider them prior to finalizing the plan. If we receive them after the plan is finalized, we would take that into account during the annual review process.
One major point I'd like to bring up, Jen, is that you're saying that these sites, some of the sites are outside the regulatory historic properties or historic sites.
Yeah.
Let me remind you. Let me remind you that when you consider these sites historic, that you think in your inventory is important and significant, we are the keepers. The department is the keepers of the historic sites. So you need to communicate with us so we can give you a site number. A lot of these can be don't have site numbers. A lot of these you say are recommended to be listed on the register. You guys need to start get cracking and start nominating these sites to the register. I mean, it's that's another stipulation in the programmatic agreement, which you have been very good at. in fulfilling. You've already nominated 5 sites, and so, but that's the basis. I mean, this is the National Historic Preservation Act, the federal act. So
I think right now I'd just like for us to, the access part of the plan.
yes,
Let's dwell on that one. You guys can do the historic nominations later. I just want to know the list of sites and whether or not the accessibility is sufficient. Joe?
Thank you.
Thank you. We did prepare our comments, and you will receive a copy of the comments. We made copies for you, Senator. Other than some of the typos and stuff that we sort of corrected, we're concerned, and you've answered the question about the days. In our plan, we only read the times, but not the days. So when you mentioned that, so I sort of checked that because you did mention the days, Monday through Friday.
Sunday.
I mean Sunday.
Pretty much any, yes.
Yeah. Okay. So that our concern, our third concern is the 30 business days. We feel that it is, a very long time to that period, and so we recommend to revisit that and shorten the days, and that there are, we recommend on a case-by-case basis. A good example would be the local healers. They don't plan to heal people 30 days from now, and that they should be given sort of, a sort of different type of review, because they when somebody's sick, they need the plants to heal them. They can't wait 30 days to do that. So that's our concern on that part. And then our the final approval will be made 7 business days. We sort of recommend that it be done quicker, and we recommend no more than 10 business days after the application submittal. So that's a comment that we have put in there. There is no mention if a request is denied and if any appeal process will be established. Guidance for expedited review, should the group already have an approved escorts. You mentioned about escorts. Should also be detailed so that if there is already an escort that's already, everything's all planned, then we still have to wait for 30 days or those days for the period. There is no mention of who cannot currently go on base for any reason. For example, we want to be able to identify these people before we submit these names so that we would help expedite it. If there's a person that we already know that is banned from the base, then we don't want to put that in the list because then that holds the process up. So we want to be able to, we wish that you can identify who can and who cannot.
From a Privacy Act perspective, we'll probably not be able to provide that information to the public. But what I can say, what happens is that all the individuals that are submitted on the access request form, they go through a background check. And essentially, as long as the background check is favorable, they are allowed access to the base. And as long as they're not on an existing list of individuals that are not, but that will come out through the background check process. But that's not a list that would be releasable.
Perhaps maybe that language can be put in there. If you already know that you're not, then you should, So maybe that language can be put in there so that we can be able to, as a group, as an organizer for that group, we can tell the group, if you already know that you may be denied, then let us know so that we can take you out of that list.
In other words, this program is not providing an exemption to the ban or something like that, right? I understand. Okay.
Okay.
Jen, a lot of this question was focused on the timing.
Mm-hmm.
Could you clarify on the 30 days? Is
Why
it that
the
they
30
have
days?
to? No, not why the 30 days, but if someone submits something and it gets processed quicker than 30 days. Do they have to wait all the way for 30 days?
Well, the request is submitted 30 business days in advance of the requested date.
Okay.
If we can move it through the approval process
Yeah.
quicker than that, we would, but their date would remain the same.
I see. I see.
Okay. We have another concern on item 5F. Group size is limited based on escorts and carpools limited to 2 vehicles per group of 7. There's no mention of school buses or trips for school children or other large groups.
Those types of visits are actually going to still be coordinated. It's important to mention that the program the intent is not to provide interpretive services. So for large school groups, for example, that are looking for an interpretive educational visit to the sites, that'll still be coordinated through the Public Affairs Office, and there is a section in the plan that outlines that, but I just wanted to let you know.
Yes. So well, you need to clarify that in this plan so that, that they don't be discouraged.
Sure. Yeah, there's section 9C it's just a brief mention, and we'll take another look at the language and see if we need to expand on that.
Yeah.
And those group tours, that's already pre-existing, right?
As far as I understand, they're coordinated through the
Through
Public
the,
Affairs
right,
Office,
right,
yes.
right, so that's just
Under
a
a separate
reference.
program.
Yeah, there's one concern. Another concern is that if the Installation Natural Resources Conservation Program personnel are tasked to review the request for collection of medicinal plants, we strongly recommend that this program receive training by notable healers, so they know and they expect what the request is going to be.
Just to clarify the purpose of the environmental staff review, it's really just to ensure that the species being collected is not either Guam listed or federally listed, and that it's for sustainable purposes. But we appreciate that feedback.
Another one is there's nothing written to prevent the commanding officer or executive officer or other Department of Defense official to modify the plan unilaterally, and revisions to the plan needs to be clarified to include procedures on how the public will be notified, as well as the medium used, for example, internet, newspaper, stuff like that. So that's our recommendation. And we do support this plan. We appreciate this at this juncture that we're at right now.
Guahu si Joseph Artero Carmen, Guahu I Presidente para Departamento ni Kahagunan Samoro, Dunkluna agradecimento para I Tautau I Joint Region Marianas, ni mana posible este na plano, ni siniamonta consigi, zau mafitma na maulik na plano, za magofzu na guaha oportunidad, senador ni un organam halum, ni pa ben penguentus da pa ben nai Masya Hafana Consuelo ni Paroni Nala fit me zol abansa monas tina plano. My name is Joseph Artero Cameron and I am the president of Chamorro Affairs. I'm very graciously accepting the comments of Joe Kinata with the Guam Preservation Trust that yes, this is a wonderful venture, a juncture into our future relationships as it deals with historic sites and for purposes of harvesting and collecting of medicinal plants. I echo the same concerns that Joe mentioned earlier, that, and we know this, we locals know this, na zangin guahamalangu, za edzuna tinanum, tisina mahulat masoda, za edza guatugi otrabandani tranka na sina masoda, za sa matunga sa gitimpun antis edzun lagat mismo guaha guinaha ni edzuna klasin amut. And it is important to understand that the healing arts has always been a part of our culture. There are folks out there that are what we call suruhanu, suruhanas, who are aware that there are particular plants of interest that have medicinal properties. We also know that nationwide, worldwide, our global communities do depend on medicinal healing when all things don't work with pharmaceuticals and the traditional way of medicine. And our local traditional healers do really need this opportunity. And we thank you for taking that into consideration. I think it's paramount. One of the things that Joe did mention, and I will echo as a opportunity, that folks don't know when they're going to need that particular plant. And if it's not available on the other side of the fence, that we can traverse and have that opportunity shortened. And that special consideration is taken for the need rather than the 30-day or, for that matter, an expedited process. And we look forward to hearing how you would mitigate that process so that our medicinal healers can get to there. I was just speaking to Frank Lizama earlier. He's one of our masters of traditions. His daughter's working towards her PhD, and her specialty on her PhD is specific to Suruhanu and Suruhanas. In doing this particular research, and I asked her for a list. I called public health and asked if they had a list of traditional healers. And I was told to call Karen Cruz at the University of Guam Nursing School. She's offline at this time. I further made the request through the Micronesia Area Research Center to just see if whether or not there is such a list that exists. They have books published about Suruhanus and Suruhanas, and so does the, there's a big fat book, huge, that's in Carolinian, Chamorro, and English from CNMI. Wonderful book, and it actually identifies who those healers are and their potential traditional ways of healing. But for Guam, it's quite interesting because there are some healers that would not want to be made public to others. And in this research that, this doctoral dissertation that's being done by Ms. Dzama, she indicated that some of them didn't want to be identified by name in her dissertation, and for reasons. And so we were wanting to know, as a direct result of that particular instance, that we keep the confidentiality of those names of those healers, and that we would have a process that doesn't befuddle or slow down the process. If the individual says, yeah, I'll give you my name, but I don't want to waiver my name, I want my name quiet. And there are, and a lot of that has to do with spiritual integrity and the traditional integrity of anonymity, and I respect that. And you probably know already, if not, you will today, that it's word of mouth. A lot of us here will call each other and says, hey, kontungo haji na suruhanu la la la. Do you know which one of the healers is still alive? Zanginti la 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 haji paro ne cumplisti. If they're not alive, who is the person below them? Did a parent pass it down to the children? And what if the children don't want, but they, and their need? This is something that Guam needs to consider outside of the scope of what we're talking about, and that is some sort of internship. But please consider that if there's anonymity requested, but a sense of urgency to enter, that you would expedite that. On the second note, I wanted to look at the whole concept of ecotourism. The manner in which this document was created, and I'm sure for the integrity of our indigenous people, that they do have some sense of pride, spiritual connection, historical connection to the sites. And I'm not sure how it came to be that for each escort, 7, not to exceed 14, 7. And maybe that's probably part of the process. But I don't particularly know that tourists from other jurisdictions who actually are cultural practitioners. I just met with a gentleman, vice speaker, 2 weeks ago with Monica Okada Guzman, And he is different from all other tourist destination packager. He doesn't exceed 10. And he's the only one out of Hawaii that does it. He goes to sites where most people don't go. And these people pay a year in advance. As a matter of fact, he's inundated. The waiting list for his company, and he came to Guam specifically 2 weeks ago to see what the opportunities were. And this will be probably one of those opportunities. But they will be very cautious and they will be very cognizant and respectful. So I was just wondering, to the extent that who cannot come?
The program is not designed for tourism. It's designed for the public of Guam. So it's not intended for commercial purposes. So I just want to put that out up front. It's not to say that visitors to the island couldn't partake in the program if they knew they were interested in visiting these sites at least 30 business days in advance, then certainly they would be considered in that process. But the intention is not for tourism.
Thank you for that clarification, because that means that our children who may not have been born in Guam, but they certainly have a tie to Guam by the last name or by the blood, that they are admitted. Thank you.
Yes. Guam Boonie Stoppers has been involved on base hikes for decades, since before I came on island. It was a very successful program. We have locals, we have military, we have visitors who all hike with us. As we go through the plan, the official comments were submitted by Dave Lotz previously, but there's a couple of things I want to highlight today. One is we had very successful base visits, as I said, for decades. That really changed with the Atlanta bombings when special restrictions were put on. Shortly after that, every request and every scheduled hike we had was canceled immediately prior to the hike, which causes the shuffle. And after a while, we stopped requesting. This is before 9/11. Through a personal meeting with Captain Galbraith years ago, we started the program again. Again, it was very successful. It lasted for, I think, about 2 years. There were no problems. Even the escorts were commenting that they had never been to these places, how great it was to come here. They never knew this, because we do our own interpretive work on the hikes. And then suddenly, whether it be change of command or the end of the EIS process, all of our hikes were again canceled at the last minute. And we stopped requesting anymore because every single one was denied. It has been that way for a while, and we made a point to try to reach out again. We've been trying for over 2 years, and that process has just come to fruition, separate from this. I think separate from this, I don't know. Where one of military personnel, who is one of our volunteer leaders, has been spearheading this process, and we have a hike scheduled for this Saturday to Spanish Steps, which we greatly appreciate, although the last minute notice is probably not going to go as well as either of our sides had hoped, because we found out about this 7 days before. But given that, we are encouraged by the process that is being formalized again. As I look at the plan, it is essentially the same plan we've been using for decades, with only a change on the days of notification. And this is a huge issue, at least for Guam Boonie Stoppers, and I assume it's going to be for others also. For a public group, a 30-day prior request and then a 7-day before the hike notification of approval will just not work. It essentially freezes us out of the process. In the past, we have our quarterly meetings where we assign hikes. We've communicated with the military personnel involved. We scheduled the hikes based on their assumptions of availability. We also scheduled backup hikes because we know that sometimes mission interferes with public access. We understand that. But we don't know. We try to schedule our hikes essentially 30 to 90 days before we do the hikes. And so we're looking for some type of commitment from the military that given there are no extenuating circumstances, that those hikes would be listed and that there's a really good chance that they're going to happen based on that much lead time. And then, as was the process in the past, 7 days before the hike, on the Saturday before the hike is scheduled, we would take a list of names. We would publish it before that the hike was going, that it was limited access, because we always limit it to 25 people or less. And we submit the names the following Sunday or Monday to the Navy, and they would approve or disapprove the names, and we go and hike the next Saturday. People don't know where they're going to be 30 or more days before when they sign the list on that type. And military people are on duty, their duty changes, they get TDY'd, local people have things happen. And so with that much of lead time, we'd end up with 25 people signed up, 15 of whom can't make it for various reasons, and then that's 15 spaces that other people can't use because the lead time is too long. And because we publish our hikes, and a lot of people depend on the publishing of those hikes to go on them, 7-day prior approval doesn't give us the time to get the word out to people to change their plans, or even a lot of times to change our plans if it's suddenly disapproved. The old things, and even this coming hike this Saturday, kind of proves that the 7-day prior notification and submitting of names can work. The Navy has a lot more infrastructure to handle this background check than we do as volunteers who come together on 1 day a week to do our hikes. It's worked well in the past. It worked well as 3 years ago under that format, and I don't see why it can't continue to be that type of format. That would be conducive to public access. 30 days prior is not conducive, at least to our group, for public access. And again, I think many other people's won't. That's our primary concern. A couple of other quick concerns that came up. I don't know if Dave mentioned these or not. I was concerned that FENA was left off of the list. This is usually a once-a-year, very specific timed event. And I realize that extraordinary things could come up. But the fact that we've gone there in the past for a site visit, I don't see why that can't be planned a year ahead of time.
That is actually going to continue. That particular program is handled through the Public Affairs Office. I just want to mention that.
Okay.
That's why you don't see it here. It is an annual event that will be continued to be handled by the Public Affairs Office.
But the annual event is not listed as a site visit to FENA. For years, we've known that it's been sometimes you go, sometimes you can't. They never tell you when you can or when you can't. Many times we've gone expecting to go up to the site and only stayed down in Agate. Other times it's not been noticed that people can access the site, and they go to the Mass and there's the bus. That's not conducive to access again, at least public access. Another point, reiterating, one of the hikes that we've done on Anderson in the past has been the Taragi Nature Trail. It was very popular. We don't just go to swim at Taragi Beach. We actually go to, in the past, the Pictograph Cave, the old village sites along the nature trail, which was interpreted at that time with a lot of signs, out to the wells, to the edge of the firing range, and turn back. Again, I don't know if that's included on Taragi. That's not listed as such in there, but that's a popular hike that we've done in the past, which I think is excellent for the people who go on to have access to again. That's an area they rarely see. Also, Anderson Air Force Base was our main access, actually lately our only access into Castro's and Retidian caves, which are very popular as historical sites, as interesting hikes. We've not been able to get any leeway from Fish and Wildlife around Retidian Cave, but it'd be nice to start up those hikes again because they are not currently accessible.
That's it. I hate to cut this short, but we have session. Can you go? I really apologize about the fact that we only have an hour. But I think it underscores the fact that everybody needs to make their comments, all right? You may need to make comments separate from Dave's. I'm making comments separate from what Senator Ben had submitted earlier. And you may need to make comments separate from Linda's. Everybody has to make comments, and I think for the listening public, each one of you, the website is on the screen right now. All of you need to go to that website, look at the plan, and we have until tomorrow evening at close of business to get our comments in. So if we don't get our comments in and they publish it, we don't get another chance to rewrite it for a year. So get them in or hold your peace for a year. And so that was the reason why we had this today, to try to encourage as much public comment as possible. Everybody that is out there that is interested, all the hikers, all the Suruhanos and people that are involved in the healing arts need to provide a comment of some sort to underscore Joseph's belief and whatever. But it's imperative, and that was the reason why I gave up my lunch today before we start session in a minute to make sure that everybody understands. Tomorrow's the deadline, and please get comments in. All right, and I want to please thank the Admiral for having both of you here, and we appreciate all that you've done. All right, thank you.